everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
Are you along for the ride?
Always.
Where's Ted?
Ted, however, is not with us tonight, so it's just me and David.
To your dismay, right?
Well, it's always a good back and forth between we're discussing the cards, so...
Right.
Yeah, he had some stuff going on, so it's just me and David. Just like the good old days.
Just like the good old days. Except there's one thing that's a little bit different.
And that's the patrons.
And that's the patrons, right. So, Grant, as always, we are totally thankful for all our patrons because they really help us pay, the bills here. There's hosting fees, and we like to put out swag, and there's all sorts of stuff that we do. We're going to have this big giveaway in February, and all of that helps, support the community and make the community awesome, and helps us keep bringing shows to people. So it's important for us to recognize all our amazing patrons. So in order from the date that they joined, it is Dominic, Joseph, Phil, Lewis, Sean, David, Robert, Mike, Daniel, Kyle, Jason, Justin, Russ, Matt, Joshua, Jake, James, Vardane, Carl, Niall, Joe, Peter, Edmund, and Alex. So 24 patrons right now as of the recording of the show. And for everybody who is a patron, thank you so much for helping us keep the lights on here at the show. One of the things that I did want to remind people or say is that I kind of revamped the Patreon page to kind of better reflect what we were doing. When I first put the Patreon page together, it was, back like a year and a half ago when we first got our first couple of patrons, and then I really haven't looked at it, but I wanted to make sure that it reflected what we are actually doing with our patrons. And so now the Patreon page is a little more reflective. It doesn't look that much different. I just I just cleaned up the tiers and things like that so that people know what they're getting. The swag for 2021 is going to be amazing. And so it's I'm talking it up because I'm so excited to produce it and give it to the community. It'll be exciting. So for anybody who's at the $5 a month or more tier, you will get swag. You have to be a patron starting sometime on or before the month of May. So because there's a kind of a big leap in the amount of stuff, not the amount of stuff, but the maybe the production cost. So that's what we're going to do for swag. I'm still planning on producing a token of appreciation for all our patrons that goes out with the swag, but I wanted to make sure that I showed all those who are giving a $5 and up donation, the what they deserve. So thank you so much, everybody, for helping out the show. Having said that, I think it's time to talk about a card, don't you think? This is where we wish I had Ted, because he always says, I love talking about cards, or I love talking about a card or a card. I don't know. And I always say, well, are we going to talk about one card, or are we going to talk about many cards? Anyways, Grant, take it over. What card are we talking about today?
We are going to Under the Ash Mountains, which was first played on our channel as a spoiler.
I know, wasn't it great? That was fun with Dan Prince of Vision of the Palantir fame, right?
Yeah. It was a good game, although we lost horribly.
I know.
David fell asleep, but we'll not talk about that right now. We'll talk about the Stone of Elostirion.
Right.
Which is the one-cost lore attachment, which is an artifact and item, and it's guarded and restricted. Attached hero gets +2 willpower, and you draw an additional card during the resource phase.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why we wanted to do the Stone of Elostirion is just because last year around this time, I think it was October-ish that the shows actually aired, but last year around this time, we had recorded all the guarded cards including, you know, like Tactics Bilbo and, you know, the King Under the Mountain and all those, or not King Under the Mountain, the King's Return and things like that that were associated with all the guarded cards. And we just wanted to complete all our guarded card episodes. You know, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that understand the completionist mentality where, you know, you start something and then all of a sudden you probably feel like you want to, you just have to finish it. So, so the Stone of Elostirion is the one that kind of finishes, or rounds out all our guarded card shows. And I think it's an interesting card. At first glance, I was wondering why this card was actually in lore, like, because it gives you 2 extra willpower. And I always thought that so, you know, you get the, let me make sure that I'm clear. Which sometimes, Grant, you know, is not, it's hard for me. But, you know, when I look at that as still kind of somebody who will read the card and then make immediate judgments about the card and then kind of go on my business, I will say that, wow, this should be a spirit card because it gives you +2 willpower. But I would say that the power of the card isn't necessarily the +2 willpower, but it's the drawing the additional card per phase. I think that that's really, and that's what pushes it into the lore sphere. So, you know, the 2 willpower I think is gravy, and that helps, but that additional card draw per phase is what I really look forward to when I play this card. What about you, Grant? What's your take?
Well, I like the fact that of the Stone of Elostirion, it's another Palantir that we've now seen.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we saw the Palantir in both the neutral card and the boon card from the Saga expansions, and now we've got the Stone of Elostirion, which is also known as Elendil's Stone.
Oh, I didn't know
that. So it's a nice and thematic, and the 2 willpower is nice. Is it necessary? Not really, but it's nice to have. And the card draw, as you said, is probably the biggest draw for this card.
Yeah, I mean, when you get into what you can do to draw cards, there's a lot of card draw things that are one-off, okay? So, but we can't put it into that category. Like, there's Drinking Song, there's Daron's Runes, there's Dark, not Deep, not... I always get those 2 confused. The one that draw Doom 2, draw card.
Deep Knowledge.
Deep Knowledge. You know, like, there's a lot of, like, one-off draw a bunch of cards. Even Peace and Thought, right? You get a whole mitt full of cards, you know, for this crazy cost. This is draw 1 card for the remainder of the game. And draw an extra card for the remainder of the game. Even Lore Bilbo isn't as good as that, because unless you're playing single player, because Lore Bilbo says the first player draws an extra card. So, you know, when you're thinking about using this card, this is, in my opinion, this is one of the strongest of the guarded cards to use. And the fact then, you know, and we always talk about this with guarded cards, is that it's guarded in just guarded location so that you know what you're getting yourself into, is so very helpful. And it's in kind of that second sphere that you pair with Spirit to kind of get you through the location. You know, as a solo player, I'm playing location. If I'm playing a location control deck, I'm not running it straight Spirit with Ravanian Outriders and Northern Trackers and things like that. I'm running Spirit Lore to be able to, you know, take advantage of Asphalloth and, you know, and have Argalad if I need some sort of, you know, elf to put Asphalloth on, you know, like, that's what I'm doing. So You know, and then you put this onto, you know, Spirit Aragorn, and that is super powerful too. I've done that, and then now you're still drawing another card around. Like, this to me is probably, you know, putting aside my love for hobbits for a minute, this to me is maybe the toppest tier of the guarded attachments. I really like the Necklace of Girion, and I really like the Arkenstone in certain builds, but I feel like this can slot into just about any deck, and you're going to get use out of it right away. So, what do you think?
Like I say, I like this this card. Is it the best guarded card? It's definitely high up on the list of, as you say, top tier guarded cards. Will I prioritize this over another guarded card, like the Necklace of Girion? Depending on my build, yeah, quite easily. Is it worth the deck slot? Definitely. If you can put it in, put it in. But again, it's guarded location. And we've not long did a show talking about the difference between, is it easier to deal with an enemy or a location? And
Yeah,
in all honesty, it's probably one of the harder ones to deal with, being guarded location. But if you're building around location control, then I don't see it being much of a problem.
yeah. I mean, the thing, like, I'm looking at a list of all the cards that grant willpower boosts, okay? And so you got to get rid of the allies, because I feel like you can't compare an ally with a willpower boost to an attachment that gives you willpower boost, right? And so, you know, like, or a hero, you can't get, you just, like, you can't compare Faramir to the Stone. I mean, maybe you could, you know, if you had a choice between running Faramir and running the Stone of Elostirion, you know, that, I guess it's just so deck dependent, because you can do a lot with Faramir, right? You don't, you know, you could MOTK him. So I don't think it's fair necessarily to have that as being your as your comparison. But if you look at something from the core set, Celebrian Stone, you know, here we are. I always point this out because I think it's so important as fans of the game to recognize that over 10 years of the life cycle of the game, that we can still talk about the core set cards still making an impact on your gameplay and on sets that have encounter sets that have been released to this day. You know, so here I am I'm gonna bring up Celebrian Stone that came out in the core set that gives you +2 willpower for 2 straight away, right? And that's in lore. If it's Aragorn, you get a spirit resource icon, but you know, you're getting 2 willpower for 2, right? And then most recently, the Silver Circlet. The Silver Circlet is 2 in spirit for 2, you know, and that's restricted. And I think they're both, I think actually a Celebrian Stone is restricted too, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, for less resources, but for a location, you can get the Stone of Elostirion. I don't know. Like, I think that this finds its way into enough decks to really be good. Like, I don't know. Like, the caveat is that when you play guarded cards, of course, you have to pick the right time. You know, you don't want to play a guarded card at the wrong time and end up with, you know, if you have 7 locations and you're just struggling with locations in the staging area and you put out the Stone of Elostirion, you know, you don't want to do that. But if you don't have any locations in your deck or that are out, you know, locations you have to deal with in a different way. So, like, it's okay to be able to put this down and have a location. And then a lot of times, I don't know, like, I don't even know what I'm saying. Like, I know what I'm saying, but like to convey that, when you're playing solo, there's a lot of times when you've cleared the locations and you're not getting location after location after location. And there's sometimes that you just wish you had a location instead of an enemy, and you get another enemy and you're like, this is horrible or something, so I think that it's easier to deal with this guy in solo maybe than in multiplayer, because multiplayer, you play 3 or 4 player, which I will tell the community right now. Here it is on the Stone of Elostirion show. I've been playing a lot of multiplayer lately since the pandemic started, because it's just what you do. You get people online and you're like, hey, you want to play a game? But I can see playing multiplayer that's tough, because you get a location and like now you have 7 locations in the staging area with 3 people, and it's impossible to clear out. So I don't know. I mean, I'm rambling, but so interrupt me here and clarify what I'm saying, or say some other point here.
Right. I think this is definitely makes it more valuable in probably solo, where you want the willpower more than multiplayer. Because in multiplayer you've probably got, as you say, 2 or 3 other players that are doing a lot of heavy questing. But the card draw is the draw for this. You're going to probably use this more than you're going to use, say, for the card draw than you are for the willpower. Yeah. So unless it's going on, say, Aragorn, who then gains a bonus to his Spirit Aragorn, who gains a bonus to his ability.
Yeah, this thing on Spirit. Let me just say that this thing on Spirit Aragorn is super nice, because you get that he's up to 4 willpower. It's easy for him to ready. You pair Spirit Aragorn with lore, because that's what location control looks like solo. Not all the time, but a lot of times. You put leather boots on him. You have readying with I don't know. Like, I love this on Spirit Aragorn. Whether Spirit Aragorn is an awesome hero to play with, that's a different story. But I don't know. Continue.
Galadriel's another good target.
Oh yeah,
for this card.
I know, because I feel like because she's not attacking, defending, or questing or any, she's going to be less subject to those cards in the encounter deck that do stuff to questing or attacking or defending heroes. So I've also put it on her.
Yeah, but also just the fact that her ability, obviously, with Nenya, allows you to gain a bonus to obviously a willpower to somebody, put a willpower to somebody else's. Mm-hmm. With the Stone of Elostirion, it's up to 6 willpower.
Right.
And you get the ability to draw a card, and it's in sphere with Nenya.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Nenya gives Galadriel the lore icon, and then you can just play it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of those are right on target. And the other thing about this is that, thinking about the, how everything fits together in a piece of the puzzle, the Ring of Barahir on Aragorn gives him extra hit points based on the number of artifacts. Plus, if it goes on Aragorn, he gets the lore icon. So if you're playing Galadriel and Spirit Aragorn, there's 2, now you have 2 targets and a lot of things that you can do. And let me say that I've done that deck too, where I've put Galadriel with Spirit Aragorn, and I really like it. I really like this. And I like it, circling back around to the beginning, is I like it, yes, for the 2 willpower, but more for the additional card draw. You probably still do need, if you're playing solo, something like a drinking song, because you eventually get all these cards in your hand and stuff you can't use, right? So you just want to get a fresh look at some new cards, so you put in some drinking songs or something to get a fresh new set of cards. But I think that this card, more than the others, is a game changer. When we were talking about the weapons, Orchrist, Glamdring, and Durin's Axe. You know, weapons are, you know, there's a ton of weapons in the game. Not that any of them give you +2, but you know, there's a lot of options here. I don't know, like card draw, you know, reliable card draw is, you know, is hard to get in this game. You have Glaewine, you have Barivore, you know, and both of those cards you have to exhaust to do that. You know, Bilbo, you don't have to exhaust, but it has to go around the table.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's where I go with this.
Okay, so we're ready to ring the Stone of Elostirion?
I mean, we could, or we could sit and talk for a little bit longer. Just a little shout out to listener Alduck. I think his username is pronounced Alduck. He's been noticing how our shows have crept on a little bit longer than the normal 15 or 20 minutes when we first started. Grant, it's
well,
that's funny.
Is I would just like to point out, when we first started, we had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea what we were talking about, and we're just spitballing.
Right.
And
how has that changed?
Well, it's changed because we've added a third person.
Oh,
so
right.
Now the episodes are going to be longer because we've added in the third person.
Right.
To just bounce things off and get their feedback in.
And I also like to, now that we are a little more, you know, seasoned at the podcasting thing, I also like to have like one little side discussion about something that's gameplay-y, that's related to the card, but not necessarily about the card. So, you know, so having those little discussions take up a little bit of time too. So, but nonetheless, Alduck, we hear you, buddy. So you know what? We're about 20 minutes in, and we're gonna ring this card, right? Oh, okay. So for anybody who doesn't know or is new to the podcast or may have forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card, not rank it. We do rank it, but we ring it on a scale from 1 to 10, and where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came, like Brock Iron Fist. So, Grant, I went first in the last show, so I'll let you go first this show. What do you think of the Stone of Elostirion?
I like the stone, and I think it is very powerful for what it does. So I'm going to give it a 3 rings.
Yeah, you must have been reading my mind. For all those things that I like, I think that there's combos out there that I haven't even really thought about. You know, like, you know, of course, drawing cards, it leads into all those other things that you have, right? Like, you can discard cards to do like the Noldor discard mechanic. You can discard cards to heal using the Song of Healing that just came out. You can discard cards to, you know, there's a lot of things that having extra cards in your hand can do that we didn't talk about, but I think that just having extra cards in your hand is the way that it is the way to help you get to the point where you need to be in this game. So, you know, I think that makes it a very powerful card, and the fact that it's guarded location and there's some shenanigans, and you guys can go back and look at some of the older episodes to find out those shenanigans. But like, you know, the Mariner's Compass, if you're playing in leadership, what is it, Heirs of Elendil, that evaporate a location, and that would free up Bilbo's plan helps like that, you know, and that came out since we've done the guarded shows. So there's just, while there's not as many location managing things, there are still some ways to manage locations to make it not as daunting as it may seem. So I think I have to agree with you, however much it pains me that this is maybe one of the best guarded cards that have been released. So I'm going to have to give it a 3. It's not an auto include in every deck, but boy, do I look at it when I have my lore, even just one lore hero, just because it costs 1. You know, it's just cheap to pull out in terms of cost, and obviously the hidden cost of having the location, but that doesn't prevent me from using this. So,
well, David, you're on par for what you say about most of the guarded cards. Just looking over what you've given to the other guarded cards, you've given the only other 2-3 rated cards you've given are the Elostirion and Orcrist.
yeah,
Are the 3.
yeah, I would probably. Yeah, so there it is. I mean, this isn't like a bomb card that I think is like one of the best cards in the game, but I think it's a top tier guarded card, and so.
Oh, definitely. And just looking over mine, the only one that scored better than this is the Elostirion. Glamdring, Orcrist, and the Mithril Shirt all scored a 3 on the guarded cards.
Well, there you have it, right? So just so everybody knows, Grant keeps the spreadsheet of what we have scored everything. So if you ever want to know what we said about a card, find Grant on Facebook, right. And he'll let you know.
Right, I will let you know. Up to a point, I have 90% of the cards that I have been with when we've all been together. I have them written down, but when I haven't been there. Say this now, David and Ted both have access to this document, but none of them update the spreadsheet.
Well, that's your thing. That's what you do. I don't want to step on your toes. Everybody has a role in this podcast, and that's yours. That's one of yours.
Keeping you on track's my job.
I know, right? Especially when Ted isn't here, right? Like, so... Okay, well, we'll have to go back. Maybe we can get one of our faithful listeners to take over the job, and maybe one of our listeners could take the job over when you're not on a show because you have things going on and you're 5 hours difference from here. Maybe maybe they can send you a message on Facebook and say Dave rated it a this and Ted rated it a that. That would help out.
Oh, definitely.
That's what Alduck can do. Alduck, that's your job.
Anybody who wants to let me know what they rate an episode, send it out. I mean, it'll be about 3 or 4 weeks from the recording, so that doesn't matter. Just give us the card and what everybody rated, and I will put it in the spreadsheet. So please and thank you.
Do you see what I have to put up with, guys? This is what Grant does. He doesn't want to do his job. He wants everybody else to do his job. This is like me, right? Like, come
on. What I would say is, if anybody is such an avid fan, if they want to go back through and find the episodes that were missing, I'm not there, just write them down and send it to them.
There we go. Well, one of the things that I've been trying to do is make the Facebook group a little more active. So, like, not the Lord of the Rings Facebook group, but our personal page, stuff that the Lord of the Rings Facebook group probably doesn't need to, know about the podcast. So maybe Grant, you can post in the Facebook group that we want to know what the ratings of certain shows are. I know you're looking for Spirit Bofer and things like that. So
yeah, I'll make a list of all the cards that I don't have ratings for, and I'll just post them out there.
There you
for
go.
People to have a look.
That's good. Okay, everybody. However much I'd love to sit here and talk about not the Stone of Elostirion, I think our show is done. So, everybody, thank you so much, and join us again as we talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.